All right, let's dive into the fascinating world of atomic habits. These tiny changes that can lead to some seriously impressive results. We're taking on James Clear's Atomic Habits today. And trust me, this is not your typical self-help book summary. We're going to go beyond the surface here, see how these ideas can actually work for you.
It's amazing how Clear reframes our thinking. Instead of obsessing over massive transformations, he highlights the power of consistent small steps. It's about understanding that those seemingly insignificant daily choices, the tiny battles, as he calls them, ultimately shape who we become.
It's funny because when I think about it, that's actually how I finally got into a consistent exercise routine. It wasn't about suddenly becoming a gym rat or anything like that. It was about committing to just 15 minutes a day. And you know what? Those 15 minutes actually add up.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. And Clear shows us that consistent action, even in small doses, is what creates lasting change. He uses a powerful metaphor, comparing time to a magnifier. It can either amplify our successes or our failures, depending on the choices we make each day.
Okay, that makes total sense. But what about goals? Aren't those important too? Clear seems to push back on the traditional goal setting approach.
He does, and I think it's a crucial distinction. He argues that while goals are about the results you want, systems are about the processes that get you there. It's like focusing on the destination versus the journey itself.
So, are you saying goals are bad? I'm a bit confused. I always thought setting goals was the key to success.
It's not that goals are inherently bad, but Clear suggests that solely focusing on them can be limiting. Imagine reaching a goal and then feeling lost, unsure of what's next, or constantly delaying your happiness until you achieve a specific outcome. That's where systems come in. They provide a framework for continuous improvement. Regardless of reaching specific milestones, think about it this way. If you want to run a marathon, the goal is crossing the finish line. But the system is the training plan, the diet, the rest, all the things that get you there.
Okay, now that makes more sense. So, it's about building a sustainable process rather than just chasing a fleeting result. It reminds me of when I decided to make writing a daily habit. I started with just one paragraph a day and slowly built from there.
Yeah.
Now, I can't imagine going a day without writing. It's become part of who I am.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of how systems lead to lasting change. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of Clear's approach, identity-based habits. He argued that our habits shape our identity and vice versa.
Wait, our habits shape our identity. I thought it was the other way around. How does that work?
Think about it this way. If you consistently act in a certain way, you start to believe that's who you are. So if you write every day, you start to see yourself as a writer. If you exercise regularly, you start to identify as a fit person. And the reverse is also true. If you identify as a healthy person, you're more likely to make choices that support that identity.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection. But isn't that a bit of a chicken and egg situation? Which comes first, the identity or the habit?
That's a great question, and I think it's a bit of both. Our existing beliefs about ourselves can influence the habits we adopt. But those habits can also reshape our self-perception over time. It's a dynamic interplay.
So it's like a feedback loop. Our actions reinforce our beliefs, and our beliefs influence our actions.
Precisely. And Clear suggests that if we want to change our habits for good, we need to start by changing the underlying beliefs that drive those habits. He says it's much easier to change your habits once you've changed your beliefs.
So instead of focusing on just doing the thing, we need to focus on becoming the kind of person who does the thing. It's about embodying the identity we want to create. I like that. But how do we actually form these habits in the first place? Are we just supposed to willpower our way through it?
Actually, Clear provides a much more nuanced framework for understanding habit formation. He breaks it down into 4 distinct stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. By understanding this cycle, we can start to see how habits take root and how to intervene at each stage to either strengthen good habits or weaken bad ones.
All right, let's break it down. What exactly is a cue?
A cue is simply a trigger that initiates a behavior. It signals to your brain that a reward might be available. Think about your morning routine. You might see your coffee maker, the cue, which triggers a craving for that caffeine kick, the craving, leading you to brew a pot, the response, and enjoy that delicious first sip, the reward.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about bad habits? How do those fit into this cycle? Let's say mindlessly scrolling on your phone. How does that work?
It's the same cycle, just with less desirable outcomes. The cue might be feeling bored or stressed, which triggers a craving for distraction or a quick hit of dopamine. The response is reaching for your phone and scrolling through social media. And the reward is that temporary sense of escape or amusement.
You know what? You just perfectly described my evening routine. I'm definitely guilty of that mindless scrolling before bed. So, how do we break these bad habits if they're so ingrained in the cycle?
Well, the first step is awareness. We need to become conscious of the cues that trigger those unwanted behaviors. Clear introduces a tool called the Habits Scorecard, which essentially involves listing all your daily habits and categorizing them as positive, negative, or neutral.
So it's like taking an inventory of my autopilot mode. I'm listing everything from brushing my teeth to checking email to, yes, scrolling on my phone before bed. But how does simply listing them out help me change anything?
By bringing those unconscious behaviors into the light of awareness, once you see your habits clearly, you can start to question them. Does this serve me? Does it align with my goals and values? Or is it holding me back? Clear highlights the importance of this awareness by sharing a fascinating story about Japanese railway conductors. They have this ritual called pointing and calling, where they point at objects and call out their actions as they perform them. It seems a bit excessive, but it's incredibly effective in reducing errors.
Wait, so they literally point at a signal and shout, "Green light"? That sounds a bit much, doesn't it?
It might seem strange, but by verbalizing their actions, they force themselves to be fully present and engaged, reducing the risk of complacency and mistakes.
So it's about bringing that same level of deliberate awareness to our own actions, even the seemingly small ones. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, I could say out loud, okay, I'm choosing to relax by checking social media for 15 minutes.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious choice rather than operating on autopilot. And once we've raised our awareness, we can start to implement strategies for building good habits and breaking bad ones. One of the most effective techniques Clear outlines is habit stacking.
Okay, I've heard of this. I'm always looking for ways to streamline my routine. How does habit stacking actually work?
It's a simple concept. You leverage the power of an existing habit to trigger a new one. It's like creating a chain reaction of positive behaviors. Let's say you want to start meditating each morning. You could stack this new habit onto an existing one, like brushing your teeth. So, your habit stack would be, after I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 5 minutes. By linking the new habit to an established routine, you make it more likely to stick.
Oh, I totally do that.
Yeah.
After I make my coffee, I always write in my journal for a few minutes. I didn't even realize I was habit stacking already.
There you go. You're already ahead of the game. And it's not just about linking new habits to existing ones. We can also strategically design our environment to make good habits easier and bad habits harder.
Okay, tell me more about this environment design thing. I'm all about making things easier for myself.
Clear emphasizes that our environment is constantly influencing our behavior, whether we realize it or not. We're much more likely to perform actions that are convenient and visible. He uses the example of a study at Massachusetts General Hospital, where they redesigned the cafeteria to promote healthier choices. By simply moving the bottled water closer to the cash registers and placing the sugary drinks further away, they significantly increased water consumption and reduced soda sales.
Wow, that's wild. So, just by rearranging things a bit, they were able to nudge people toward healthier choices. That's actually pretty brilliant. What other environment hacks does Clear suggest?
He talks about making the cues for good habits obvious and the cues for bad habits invisible or less appealing. For example, if you want to read more, place a book on your bedside table or on the couch where you usually relax. If you want to eat healthier, make sure your kitchen is stocked with fresh fruits and vegetables, and keep unhealthy snacks out of sight. It's about creating an environment that supports your goals.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like setting yourself up for success by minimizing temptations and maximizing opportunities for good choices. But what if we're dealing with those really ingrained habits, the ones that feel almost impossible to break?
Well, in addition to environment design, there are other strategies we can use to make good habits easier and bad habits harder. One of the most effective is reducing friction.
Reduce friction. I feel like I need a physics lesson right now. What does that mean in the context of habits?
It simply means minimizing the effort required to perform a good habit and maximizing the effort required to perform a bad habit.
So it's about removing the obstacles that stand in our way and adding obstacles to the things we want to avoid. I like it. Tell me more.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to reduce friction for good habits is to automate them. Think about all the things we automate in our lives. Bill payments, savings deposits, grocery deliveries.
Oh yeah, I love automating my finances. It saves so much time and stress.
Exactly. By leveraging technology, we can make good habits effortless, freeing up our time and energy for other things.
I use a meditation app that sends me reminders throughout the day. It's like having a mindfulness coach in my pocket.
That's a great example. By automating the reminders, You're reducing the friction involved in practicing mindfulness. It's about making it as easy as possible to do the things that benefit you. And Clear provides a fascinating historical example of how automating a behavior can dramatically change outcomes. The story of the first cash register.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Cash registers and habits, how are those connected?
Back in the late 1800s, a saloon owner named James Ritty was struggling with employee theft. Cash transactions were handled manually back then, making it easy for employees to skim money without being detected. But then, he came across an invention that revolutionized business, the cash register. It automatically recorded and locked away cash after each transaction, making it practically impossible for employees to steal.
So he basically automated honesty.
Exactly. The cash register not only solved his immediate problem, but it also transformed the retail industry. It's a powerful example of how even a simple innovation can drastically alter behavior and create lasting change.
This is really making me think about all the ways I can automate my good habits. I'm already picturing myself setting up automatic transfers to my savings account and scheduling grocery deliveries to avoid those impulse buys at the store.
Those are great ideas. And don't forget about those low-tech solutions too, like preparing your workout clothes the night before, or laying out your ingredients for a healthy breakfast. It's about making those good choices the path of least resistance.
This has been so helpful. I'm feeling inspired to take control of my habits and make them work for me instead of against me. But one thing I always struggle with is motivation, especially when it comes to those habits with delayed rewards. How do we deal with that?
That's a great question, and it's something Clear addresses in detail. He explains that our brains are wired to prioritize immediate rewards over delayed gratification.
Ugh, tell me about it. I'm much more likely to reach for that cookie now than to think about the long-term benefits of eating healthy.
That's our ancient wiring at play. But there are strategies for overcoming this tendency. One approach Clear suggests is temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling, huh? That sounds a bit dangerous.
Oh.
But also intriguing. What is it all about?
It's about pairing an activity you want to do with an activity you need to do, making the latter more appealing.
Oh, so it's like tricking yourself into doing the things you know you should do.
Exactly. It's a clever way to harness the power of immediate gratification. To motivate you to engage in behaviors with delayed rewards, let's say you love watching Netflix, but you also know you need to exercise more. You could bundle these activities by only allowing yourself to watch your favorite shows while working out at the gym.
Okay, that's actually brilliant. I'm much more likely to hit the treadmill if I can catch up on my favorite series at the same time.
Exactly. By linking a pleasurable activity to a necessary one, you make the latter more desirable.
I'm definitely going to try that. But even if we manage to outsmart our brains and set ourselves up for success, isn't it still important to enjoy the process?
Absolutely. Making good habits enjoyable is key to their sustainability. Clear emphasizes that if the process itself is unpleasant, we're less likely to stick with it, regardless of the potential rewards.
So true. I've tried forcing myself to do things I hate, and it never ends well. It's like setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to make habits more satisfying is through habit tracking.
You know, I've always been a bit skeptical of habit tracking. Isn't it just about checking boxes on a calendar? What's so special about that?
It might seem simple, but it's more powerful than you might think. Habit tracking provides several benefits that boost motivation and reinforce the habit loop. It provides visual proof of your progress. It motivates continued action, and it adds a layer of satisfaction to the entire process.
Okay, I'm listening. How does habit tracking provide visual proof of progress?
Think about seeing a string of X's on a calendar, or a growing chart in an app. It's a visual reminder that you're making progress, even if the changes feel small.
I can definitely relate to that. When I see how many days in a row I've meditated, it gives me a sense of accomplishment and makes me want to keep the streak going.
Exactly. And it also motivates continued action. Seeing those empty squares on your calendar for the days ahead can nudge you to stick to your habit. It's like you don't want to break the chain.
It's like a game. And we humans love a good game, don't we?
We do. And habit tracking also adds a layer of satisfaction to the habit loop. It's inherently satisfying to mark off a task as complete. And that feeling of accomplishment reinforces the behavior, making you more likely to repeat it.
So it's like a mini celebration each time I check off a habit, even if it's just a mental high five.
Exactly. It's those small moments of satisfaction that keep us going.
This whole conversation about habit tracking has made me a believer. I need to find a system that works for me and start incorporating it into my routine. But what about accountability? Does that play a role in habit formation too?
Absolutely. Accountability is one of the most powerful tools for sticking to our commitments. When we know someone is watching or expecting us to follow through, we're much less likely to slip up.
It's like having an external motivator to keep us on track. But what if you don't have someone to hold you accountable?
Clear suggests creating a habit contract. It's a written agreement where you outline your desired habit, the consequences for skipping it, and an accountability partner who will enforce the agreement.
Wait, so it's like a legally binding document for my personal goals. I'm picturing myself signing it in blood.
It doesn't have to be that dramatic, but it should be something you take seriously. And it doesn't have to involve money or punishments either. It could simply be an agreement with a friend to check in with each other regularly and share progress.
I like that. It's about finding ways to make our commitments more concrete and leveraging social support to keep us motivated.
Exactly. And social support is a key factor when it comes to finding our strengths and building habits that align with our natural abilities.
Okay, tell me more about this connection between social support and finding our strengths.
Well, it's easier to build and maintain habits when they align with our natural abilities and interests. We're more likely to enjoy activities we're good at, and enjoyment is a crucial ingredient in habit formation. Think about how much easier it is to stick to a hobby you love compared to a chore you dread.
That makes total sense. But how do we figure out what our strengths are?
That's where social support can play a role. Talking to friends, family, and mentors can provide valuable insights into our talents and passions. They often see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. And once we have a better understanding of our strengths, we can start to build habits that leverage those abilities. Clear uses a fascinating example to illustrate this concept: the story of the Polgar sisters.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Who are the Polgar sisters?
They're three Hungarian sisters who were raised to be chess prodigies by their father, Laszlo Polgar. Laszlo believed that genius could be nurtured, not just inherited. And he set out to prove his theory by turning his daughters into world-class chess players.
Wow, that's a bold experiment. Did it work?
It did. All three sisters became incredibly successful chess players, with the youngest, Judith, becoming the highest-rated female chess player of all time.
That's incredible. It's like a real-life case study.
Yeah.
And the power of environment and deliberate practice.
Exactly. Laszlo created an environment that was completely immersed in chess. The girls were homeschooled, their house was filled with chess books and images of famous players, and they played against each other constantly. They were surrounded by cues and opportunities to practice and improve their skills.
So it's like they were living in a chess-themed world, which probably made it a lot easier to stick to their training regimen.
Exactly, and because they were constantly engaged in an activity that aligned with their natural abilities, they excelled at it. They enjoyed the challenge. They were praised for their success, and they were motivated to keep improving.
This story really highlights the power of aligning our passions with our abilities. When we find that sweet spot, it's like we unlock a whole new level of potential.
Absolutely. And another key to finding that sweet spot is the Goldilocks rule.
The Goldilocks rule. I'm getting hungry just hearing that name.
It's about finding the right level of challenge. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right. This applies to habit formation as well.
So if a habit is too easy, we get bored. And if it's too hard, we get discouraged.
Exactly. We need to find that sweet spot of challenge. Tasks that stretch our abilities but don't overwhelm us.
This makes me think about those times. I've tried to learn a new skill too quickly and ended up feeling frustrated and giving up.
It's a common experience. When we set the bar too high, it's easy to feel defeated when we inevitably stumble. It's better to start with small, manageable challenges and gradually increase the difficulty as we improve.
So it's about finding that balance between challenge and mastery.
Precisely. And when we hit that sweet spot, we can often enter a flow state.
Oh, flow state. I love those moments when I'm completely absorbed in an activity and time seems to disappear. But how do we intentionally create those flow states?
The Goldilocks rule plays a key role. When we're engaged in tasks that are just challenging enough, we're more likely to experience flow.
This is making me rethink my approach to my work and hobbies. I need to find ways to inject more challenge and novelty into my routine.
It's about finding that balance for optimal growth and enjoyment. But even when we find that sweet spot, there will inevitably be times when we feel bored or unmotivated.
Boredom. The dreaded enemy of progress. How can we push through those slumps and stay committed to our habits, even when we're not feeling it?
Well, Clear shares an anecdote about a conversation he had with an elite weightlifting coach. The coach said that one of the key differences between the best athletes and everyone else is their ability to handle the boredom of training day after day.
Really? I thought those top athletes were just super driven and passionate all the time.
Those qualities are important, but they often fluctuate. What separates the truly successful is the ability to show up consistently, even when they're not feeling particularly inspired.
So it's about discipline and commitment, rather than relying on those fleeting emotions.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even with the right habits, there will be times when we feel like quitting. But the key is to push through those feelings and stick to the schedule.
It reminds me of that quote, motivation gets you started, habit keeps you going. But doesn't it get monotonous doing the same things over and over? How do we stay engaged when the novelty wears off?
That's where it becomes crucial to embrace the boredom. Mastery requires practice. And the more we practice something, the more boring it can become. But the key is to find a way to fall in love with the process, even when it's not glamorous or exciting.
That's such a powerful reframing. Instead of dreading the repetition, I can view it as an opportunity to refine my skills, to get a little bit better each time.
Exactly. It's about embracing the grind, the journey, the pursuit of excellence.
This is really making me rethink my entire approach to habit formation. It's not just about setting goals and grinding it out. It's about understanding the underlying psychology, finding our strengths, designing our environment, and embracing the process itself. So where should we even begin? What's the most important takeaway for you?
I think the most important takeaway is that lasting change is a process, not an event. It's about building systems that support our desired behaviors, focusing on our identity, and embracing the power of tiny gains. Clear emphasizes that success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations.
So it's about showing up each day and doing the work, even when it's not glamorous or exciting. It's about consistency and commitment over time.
Precisely. And even if we stumble along the way, it's about getting back on track and continuing to make those small, incremental improvements.
This whole conversation has been incredibly motivating. I'm feeling inspired to take a closer look at my own habits and see where I can apply these principles.
That's great to hear. Remember, even the smallest changes can make a big difference over time.
Before we move on to the second part of our deep dive, I'd love to know, what's one tiny habit you'd suggest our listener focus on building or breaking to start putting these ideas into practice?
That's a great question. It really depends on the listener's individual goals and values. But if I had to pick one, I'd say starting with something small and manageable is key. How about incorporating a short walk into your daily routine? Even just 10-15 minutes can make a big difference.
I love that walking is such an underrated activity. It's good for your physical health, your mental well-being, and it's a great way to clear your head and boost creativity. Plus, it's something most people can easily incorporate into their day.
Exactly. And you can easily habit stack it. Take a walk after lunch or dinner, or listen to a podcast while you walk.
All right, so we've covered a ton of ground already, from the power of tiny gains to the importance of environment design and habit stacking. But I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the idea that our brains are wired for immediate gratification. It seems like we're constantly battling our own impulses, especially in a world filled with tempting distractions. How do we bridge that gap between what we want now and what's good for us in the long run?
That's a great question, and it's a struggle we all face. One strategy, Clear suggests, is to make those delayed rewards more tangible, more immediate. For example, if you're trying to save money, try visualizing your future self, enjoying the benefits of your financial security, like a comfortable retirement, a dream vacation, or the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're prepared for unexpected expenses.
So it's like bringing that future reward into the present moment, making it more concrete and motivating.
Exactly. And another strategy is to find ways to make the process itself more enjoyable. For example, if you're trying to exercise more along, choose activities you genuinely enjoy. Find a workout buddy to keep you accountable, or reward yourself with something you look forward to after each workout.
I can definitely attest to that. I used to dread going to the gym, but then I discovered Zumba. Now I actually look forward to my workouts because they're so much fun.
That's a perfect example. It's about shifting your focus from the delayed reward to the immediate experience. And another key is to be patient with yourself. Habit formation takes time, and there will be setbacks along the way.
That's such an important reminder. It's easy to get discouraged when we don't see results immediately.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's about trusting the process and focusing on those small, consistent steps.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the journey, the ups and downs, and trusting that consistency over time will lead to the desired results.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked about how to make those delayed rewards more appealing, but what about those instant gratification traps? how do we resist those tempting distractions that seem to be everywhere we turn?
Well, one strategy is to become more aware of the cues that trigger those unwanted behaviors, like we talked about earlier with the habit scorecard. Simply becoming conscious of those patterns can be a powerful first step. Once you know your triggers, you can start to create strategies for avoiding or managing them.
So if my trigger is feeling stressed after work and my bad habit is mindlessly scrolling on social media, maybe I need to find a new way to de-stress, like going for a walk or listening to music.
Exactly. It's about finding healthier coping mechanisms and replacing those bad habits with more positive alternatives. And another powerful tool is to make those bad habits less convenient. Clear talks about the importance of increasing friction, which essentially means making it harder to engage in those unwanted behaviors.
So if my bad habit is spending too much time on my phone, maybe I need to delete those tempting apps or put my phone in another room when I'm trying to focus.
Exactly, out of sight, out of mind. It's about creating barriers and making those bad choices less accessible. And on the flip side, we can make good habits more appealing by reducing friction, like we talked about earlier with automation.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. It's like we're creating a system where good choices are easy and bad choices are difficult. It's like we're designing our environment to support our goals.
Precisely. And another important aspect of managing those instant gratification impulses is to be mindful of our self talk. The way we talk to ourselves about those temptations can either strengthen or weaken our resolve.
Also, it's about those inner conversations, the stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I can't have that cookie, which can actually make it more desirable, try saying something like, I'm choosing to prioritize my health.
So it's about framing those choices in a positive light and focusing on the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with your values and reminding yourself of your goals.
This whole conversation about instant versus delayed gratification has been incredibly eye-opening. It's like we're constantly navigating this internal tug of war between our impulses and our aspirations. But understanding the psychology behind these mechanisms can empower us to make more conscious choices.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that we're not alone in the struggle. We're all wired for instant gratification, but with awareness and the right strategies, we can overcome those impulses and create lasting change.
Okay, so we've talked about how to make delayed rewards more appealing and how to manage those instant gratification traps. But what about those times when we just feel stuck? When even the smallest habits feel overwhelming, how do we get unstuck and regain momentum?
That's a great question, and it's something we all experience from time to time. Clear offers some helpful strategies for breaking through those plateaus and reigniting our motivation. One of the most effective is to revisit your why.
Okay, revisit my why. What does that mean exactly?
It means taking some time to reconnect with the reasons behind your goals. Why are you trying to build these habits in the first place? What are you hoping to achieve? What's the bigger picture you're striving for?
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like reminding yourself of the bigger purpose behind those daily actions. It's not just about checking off boxes. It's about creating a life that aligns with your values.
Exactly, and sometimes those initial reasons might have evolved or shifted over time, so it's a good practice to periodically check in with yourself and make sure your goals and habits are still serving you.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like taking inventory of your motivations and making adjustments as needed. But what about when the problem isn't lack of motivation, but rather feeling overwhelmed by the sheer number of things we're trying to change?
That's a common challenge, and it's where the principle of focus comes in. Clear emphasizes the importance of prioritizing our habits and focusing on one or two key changes at a time.
So instead of trying to overhaul our entire lives overnight, we should focus on those one or two keystone habits that will have the biggest ripple effect.
Exactly. It's about choosing those habits that will unlock the most progress and create momentum. And once those habits are firmly established, you can move on to the next ones.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like creating a domino effect of positive change. But what if you're struggling to even identify those keystone habits? How do you figure out where to start?
That's where it can be helpful to revisit your goals and values. What are the most important areas of your life right now? Where do you want to see the most growth? Which habits would have the biggest impact on those areas? Once you have a clear understanding of your priorities, you can start to narrow down your focus and choose those habits that will create the most meaningful change.
Okay, so it's about aligning those atomic habits with our bigger goals and values. It's not just about changing our actions. It's about creating a life that feels more authentic and fulfilling.
Exactly, and that's where the concept of identity comes full circle. As we build those keystone habits, we start to see ourselves differently. We start to identify as the kind of person who embodies those qualities, and that shift in self-perception can have a powerful ripple effect on all areas of our lives.
This whole conversation about atomic habits has been incredibly inspiring. It's made me realize that even small changes, when done consistently, can have a profound impact on our lives. But I'm curious, what about you? What's one habit you're currently working on, and how are you applying these principles to your own life?
That's a great question. I'm currently working on incorporating more mindfulness into my daily routine. I've found that even just a few minutes of meditation each day can make a big difference in my focus, my stress levels, and my overall well being. I've started habit stacking it with my morning coffee routine after I pour my coffee. I sit down for 5 minutes of quiet reflection.
I love that it's such a simple but powerful practice, and it's a great example of how we can integrate these principles into our own lives in a way that feels authentic and sustainable.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of tiny gains, the importance of systems, the role of identity, and the strategies for managing those instant versus delayed gratification impulses. But what about those times when we hit a wall, when those old habits creep back in and we feel like we're taking 2 steps back for every 1 step forward? How do we deal with those setbacks and get back on track?
That's a great question, and it's something we all experience at some point on our habit building journey. Setbacks are inevitable, but it's how we respond to them that matters most. Clear emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and resilience in these moments.
So instead of beating ourselves up when we slip up, we should approach those setbacks with curiosity and a willingness to learn. What can we learn from these experiences? How can we adjust our approach moving forward? Exactly. It's about viewing those setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities for growth and learning. And it's important to remember that progress isn't always linear. There will be ups and downs, but the key is to keep moving forward, even if it's just one tiny step at a time.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about how to deal with setbacks, but what about those times when we feel like we've plateaued, when we've been consistently practicing our habits, but we're not seeing any further progress? How do we break through those plateaus and reach new levels of mastery?
That's a great question, and it's something that can happen with any habit we're trying to build. We might reach a point where those initial gains slow down and we feel like we're stuck in a rut. Clear suggests that one of the best ways to break through these plateaus is to increase the challenge.
So it's like we need to level up our habits to push ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
Remember the Goldilocks rule we talked about earlier? We need to find that sweet spot of challenge that keeps us engaged and motivated. If a habit becomes too easy, it can become monotonous and we lose interest.
So if I've been meditating for 5 minutes a day for a while now and I'm starting to feel like it's not as challenging anymore, maybe I need to increase it to 10 minutes or try a new type of meditation.
Exactly. Or if you've been walking for 30 minutes a day, maybe it's time to increase your pace or try a more challenging route. It's about finding ways to keep those habits engaging and stimulating so that we continue to grow and progress.
This is making me realize that habit building is a dynamic process, not a static one. It's not just about setting a goal and sticking to it rigidly. It's about constantly adapting and evolving as we learn and grow.
Absolutely. And it's also about embracing the journey. Clear emphasizes that the process of building habits can be just as rewarding as the destination itself. It's about enjoying those small wins, celebrating our progress, and finding joy in the pursuit of mastery.
You know, that's such an important point. It's easy to get so focused on the end goal that we forget to appreciate the journey. But those small steps, those daily rituals, those moments of challenge and growth, that's where the real magic happens.
I couldn't agree more. It's about embracing the entire process, the good, the bad, and the messy in between. It's about showing up each day with a willingness to learn, to grow, and to become the best version of ourselves, one tiny habit at a time.
Well said. Okay, I think it's time to shift gears and dive into the last part of our deep dive on atomic habits. We've talked about how to build good habits, how to break bad ones, and how to manage those inevitable setbacks and plateaus. But I'm curious, what are some of the unexpected benefits of adopting this atomic habits approach? What are the ripple effects that extend beyond those specific habits we're trying to build?
That's a great question, and I think one of the most profound ripple effects is a shift in mindset. As we start to see the power of small changes, we develop a greater sense of agency and self-efficacy. We realize that we have the power to shape our lives one tiny habit at a time.
So it's not just about those individual habits. It's about developing a belief in our own ability to create change.
Exactly. And that belief can extend to all areas of our lives. We start to approach challenges with more confidence, knowing that we have the tools and strategies to overcome them. And we become more resilient in the face of setbacks, knowing that we can always course correct and get back on track.
I love that it's like this Atomic Habits approach empowers us to become the architects of our own lives.
It does, and another unexpected benefit is a greater sense of clarity and purpose. As we start to consciously design our habits, we become more intentional about how we spend our time and energy. We start to ask ourselves, does this habit serve me? Does it align with my values? Does it contribute to the life I want to create? And those questions can lead to some profound insights about our priorities and our path.
So it's not just about changing our actions, it's about clarifying our values and aligning our lives with those values.
Exactly. And as we start to live more intentionally, we often experience a greater sense of fulfillment and meaning. We feel more connected to our purpose, and we find joy in the simple act of living a life that reflects our truest selves.
This whole conversation about the ripple effects of atomic habits has been incredibly insightful. It's made me realize that this approach is about so much more than just checking off boxes or achieving specific goals. It's about cultivating a mindset of growth, intentionality, and self-efficacy. It's about creating a life that feels both fulfilling and meaningful.
Couldn't agree more. It's about embracing the power of small changes and trusting that those small changes over time can lead to extraordinary results.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the science of habit formation to the strategies for overcoming those pesky instant gratification impulses. But before we move on to the final part of our exploration, I'd love to hear from our listener. What's one unexpected benefit you've experienced from adopting an atomic habits approach? How has this mindset shift impacted your life beyond those specific habits you're working on? Take a moment to reflect on that question, and we'll pick up the conversation in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into atomic habits. We've been exploring how these tiny changes can lead to some pretty remarkable results. As we've been discussing these concepts, I've been thinking about my own morning routine. It's amazing how those small actions set the tone for the entire day.
It's true, our morning routines can be incredibly powerful. They prime our minds and bodies for the day ahead, and they can either set us up for success or lead us down a path of distraction and procrastination.
That's something I've noticed in my own life. When I skip my morning workout or scroll through social media first thing, I feel less focused and productive throughout the day. But when I stick to my routine, I feel more energized and motivated.
Exactly. It's like those small actions create a ripple effect that extends throughout the day, and it highlights the importance of designing our mornings in a way that supports our goals and values.
Okay, so let's talk about morning routines for a bit. What are some key elements of an effective morning routine that aligns with this atomic habits approach?
Well, I think one of the most important elements is intentionality. It's about starting the day with a clear sense of purpose and direction, rather than just reacting to whatever comes your way. Take a few moments to reflect on your goals and priorities for the day and choose actions that align with those goals.
So instead of just hitting the snooze button and stumbling out of bed, we should be more deliberate about how we begin our day.
Exactly. Even just 5 or 10 minutes of quiet reflection or journaling can make a big difference. It helps you clarify your thoughts, set your intentions, and get into the right mindset for the day ahead.
That makes sense. It's about starting the day from a place of intention rather than reaction. What other elements are important?
I think incorporating some form of movement is crucial, whether it's a quick workout, a yoga session, or even just a few stretches. Moving your body first thing in the morning helps wake up your mind and body, and it sets a positive tone for the rest of the day.
I used to be one of those people who hit the snooze button multiple times, but then I started incorporating a short workout into my morning routine, and it's amazing how much more energy I have throughout the day.
That's a great example, and it highlights the power of habit stacking. You can easily stack a workout onto an existing habit like brushing your teeth or making coffee.
So it's about creating a chain reaction of positive behaviors. Once I finish brushing my teeth, I automatically put on my workout clothes and get moving.
Exactly, and another important element is nourishing your body with a healthy breakfast. It provides the fuel you need to think clearly, focus, and power through your morning.
I used to skip breakfast all the time, but I've realized that making time for a nutritious meal in the morning makes a huge difference in my energy levels and my mood.
It's true, and there are so many quick and easy breakfast options that align with this atomic habits approach, like overnight oats smoothies, or even just a piece of fruit and some nuts.
So it's about finding those small, sustainable changes that fit into your lifestyle and that support your overall health and well-being.
Exactly. And the key is to experiment and find what works best for you. There's no one-size-fits-all morning routine. It's about designing a routine that aligns with your individual goals, values, and preferences.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating a personalized routine that sets you up for success and that helps you build those atomic habits that lead to lasting change.
Precisely. And I think one of the most powerful aspects of designing an effective morning routine is the sense of control it gives you. You're starting the day on your own terms rather than letting the day control you.
That's something I've definitely noticed in my own life. When I have a solid morning routine, I feel more in control of my day and less reactive to whatever comes my way.
It's like you're setting the tone for the day and creating a foundation of positive habits that support your goals.
This whole conversation about morning routines has been incredibly helpful. It's made me realize that those small actions we take at the beginning of the day can have a profound impact on our overall well-being and our ability to achieve our goals.
It's true, our mornings are a powerful opportunity to set ourselves up for success, and by incorporating these atomic habits principles, we can create routines that empower us, energize us, and help us live our best lives.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dives into atomic habits. It's been an incredible journey exploring the power of small changes and how those changes can lead to remarkable results.
It has been a pleasure diving into this with you.
The pleasure was all mine, and a huge thank you to you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive into atomic habits.
Right.
Remember, even the smallest actions can make a big difference over time. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep building those atomic habits that lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Until next time.